desperate, at the time I was 17, 18, unemployed, and I was desperate to get a break. And I knew that if I did get a try, I would grab the chance.
I think it was always going to be boxing. The minute I stepped into the gym as a 10 or 11-year-old, boxing just took hold of my heart straight away. I love everything about the sport of boxing.
Hello, I'm Marie Crowe, and this is We Become Heroes, the RTE Sport podcast that explores how elite athletes and sports people reach the top of their game and the lessons that they learned along the way. I'm delighted to say that my guest today is 12-time All-Ireland winner Ann Downey. Ann, how are you?
I'm not so bad, Marie. Thanks for inviting me on, yeah.
Thanks a million for coming on. It's great. You've had such an amazing career, when you think of growing up, there was so few female sports stars that we got to see on TV and hear about. And, it's great to have people that were out there breaking the glass ceiling, setting the standards and just being visible.
Yeah, it started so long ago. We just think it was nearly yesterday and that we could still go out and play. But when we go back and say, our first All-Ireland to be involved with was 1972, my God, it's a lifetime ago, Unreal.
It really does. And you've just achieved so much in so many different senses. What are you doing now in terms of involvement in sport? Are you coaching teams or what are you doing?
I'm not doing anything, Marie, this year, to be quite honest. I was with the club here in the village last year, but this year I suppose it's my first time since I retired from Camogie, playing at least, that I've had a free year. And I suppose COVID as well just made it so difficult last year to try and to get a team together. We had 15 weeks with the lads, so it was just too much, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And to do the job right, you have to really be able to have the lads when you want, and that was impossible with COVID. And I'm just happy, really, just to take the time out now and spend it in the garden. And Angela comes out most weekends on the Friday night and goes home on a Sunday, so we go at the garden here. I put her to work and get a few hours work out for her, that's so, and then we're enjoying it, it's different. And of course she's still involved in the Camogie, and I'm going to the Camogie games, and Conor is playing with Kilkenny, so there's plenty to be doing and plenty of interest with in me for the GA.
Yeah, real strong connection. It sounds like yourself and Angela are really, really close.
Oh, sure, we are really, even when she went away, I suppose, to Maynooth after we were in boarding school, I used to go to all her matches. The father, Lord of mercy on the father, Ryan he'd collect me and we'd head off to Belfast, or we'd go to Galway, wherever she was playing the Ashburns. And then she got married, she's living in town, and I'm only working up the road from her. So before COVID, I would go down every day to Angela's house for my lunch. And she was here today, and we'd be on the phone a few times during the day. It might only to be give out or say something, or did you do something? But yeah, we're very close, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, it's lovely to have that, and to have that sounding board, and also that connection to Camogie and to sport as well, when it was such a big part of your life for so long.
Yeah. Sure, it was really, Marie, when we were growing up here in the village, there really wasn't anything to do. My mother and father, my mother, I suppose, was very strict, and it was a case of having your breakfast and go out in the garden and entertain yourself, and I don't want to see you till lunchtime at 12 o'clock and go back out then. And we could be put to bed at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, but all we had to do was really play the sport, or the neighbours would come in and we'd have five-a-side. And we had a neighbour down the road, Tommy Roberts, and he was a few years older than us. We'd hear him on the road, belting the ball off the side of his house, and the next thing we'd be looking to go out. He'd be at one end of the street and we'd be up at the other. And I suppose that's really how it started. I suppose Daddy obviously had played for Kilkenny and won a few All-Irelands, and he had a man that would work with him here, and he saw Angela and myself in the garden, and he went home to his daughter, Mary Conway, and he said Mary was very involved with St. Paul's at the time. I mean, we were only 10 or 11, and he said, there's two young ones up there in Ballaragget, you may get them to join. So we joined St. Paul's, and I think we won a junior county final when we were 12. And sure, it really took off from then. We were blessed with the players that we got involved with. When we started was Carmel O'Shea and Phil O'Shea and Nuala Duncan, and household names, Liz Neary, brilliant players, and we were just blessed, I suppose, that we came along at the right time. But it wasn't easy even then making the breakthrough, because you had to win Leinster, and several times, went to a Leinster final and Wexford would beat us, and that was it, your year over. And eventually it was open draw, and Kilkenny made the breakthrough in 74, and we had some 20 glorious years from 74 to 94. It was unreal.
So when you said you played a junior final at 12, like junior wasn't junior, was it back then, or like it was playing adults?
Well, it would have been adults. I mean, I have a photograph of the dinner dance. As it happened, the dinner dance was, my grandfather, I remember, died on the 28th of December, and the dinner dance was on the 29th. And I mean, God forgive us, I suppose. At the time, we were wondering, were we going to get to this dinner dance? But anyway, we got to go in and get our medals and come home. But there's a photograph that was taken that night, and all the girls in it are the women. They're all women, and we were two little children beside the captain at each side, in our confirmation dress, as I remember at the time. But sure, look, I suppose we were able to hold our own, and that's all that mattered, It was junior, yeah.
It was a bit more normal back then. You wouldn't see it now anyway. And I guess things have changed quite a lot, even in terms of just organised sports for children now. There's just so much more of it than there would have been when you were growing up.
Well, look, there was no sport really organised. Our first game, I suppose, was Mammy and Mrs. Ruth, Matt Ruth's mother, had lived in the village here, and they organised us, piled us into a few cars, and we headed down to the Rory na Steig from primary school, and we played a game against them, and they came up to us. That was it. That was finished. There was nothing else after that until we joined St. Paul's. And then after we finished primary school, Maria and Angela and myself, we went to Castlecomer, and we played Camogie in Castlecomer, and we won a junior All-Ireland there. And at the stage, Mammy decided too much Camogie, too much sport, and not enough study. So they decided we were going to boarding school, but I put my foot down. I said I wasn't going to boarding school, but Angela and Maria did go back. So they spent the last 2 years in boarding school, and they went back in September. And then at Easter, Mammy came home and she just said, look, you're going back now. So, as I missed them, I missed Angela. I was here in the house on my own, and before it was a rat race to the bathroom. You'd be knocking on the door to get in, and you were running out the door for the bus. And I missed all that when Angela had gone away to boarding school. And it was actually the principal, Michael Hester in Castlecomer, could see that I was, lonely really without her. And sure, I went back then. I went to boarding school 2 months after she did, and sure, I never looked back. I didn't play Camogie the first year with them because I had started the competition with Castlecomer, but I did play in 75. We were beaten in an All-Ireland in Crowe Park. The college's All-Ireland was in Crowe Park that year. We're playing a presentation at Roy, and a girl called Midge Ponyard beat us on her own. We went to extra time, but we were well beaten in the end, yeah.
So what was your very first earliest memory of watching sport or playing sport, or just even sport in general?
I suppose it would have always had been the All-Ireland, because we wouldn't be brought to the All-Ireland obviously, but it would be on the television here, and it was kind of, you sit down and you stay quiet and you watch the match. Eddie Kerr and Chunky O'Brien and Frank Cummins, Noel Ski, and all those great players. That really would have been my first memory anyway. Obviously there wasn't Camogie on it, and there was football. So it was really the football All-Ireland and the hurling All-Ireland that we were exposed to really.
And who were your heroes then?
Well, when we got involved in Camogie, I always looked up to, Liz Neary and Carmel O'Shea. They were great Camogie players, but we hadn't made the breakthrough, I suppose, with Kilkenny at the time. But Frank Cummins to me was a fantastic player. The skill that he had, and he was a giant of a man. At that time it was kind of more pulling on the ball. There wasn't that much rising, but I just admired the way he went. Chunky O'Brien, there were so many of them, Eddie Kerr, all that at that era, but the energy that Frank Cummins had around the centre of the field, and then in latter years there was a player called Liz Garvey from from Cork. I had seen her playing in an All-Ireland as well, and she was just dynamite, you know. So until I suppose Kilkenny started to win, really, there was probably no people that you could look up to, no women in sport that you could look up to, really. You know, it was all the men at the time.
Yeah, so you had to pave your own way, really, because there was no visibility, I'd imagine, back then at all. Yeah. And even opportunity-wise, like, you were lucky, really, that you did get to play and get to go on and have a career. But was there any other sports that you played that you enjoyed, that you were good at?
Well, for the winter, I would have played hockey, and I won a White Cup medal with Kilkenny in hockey. But I suppose my big sport after that was squash, and I represented Ireland eventually. I got 5 or 6 caps playing for Ireland. So that was a lot of energy put into that in the winter months, you know, a lot of coaching and going to Belfast to the boat club. You know, you could have to head off maybe on Stevens's Day, because the home internationals would have been the end of January, the beginning of February. So that was, I suppose, a great achievement for me, to be honest, you know, be it that I could come off the court and they'd say, thanks, Angela, to me. And Angela didn't even play squash. But,
oh, brilliant.
You know, so be it. I just took it on the chin and said, right, sure, you know, what changes, you know.
And when did you realise, well, you realised that you had talent for sport?
Do you know, look, Maria, I don't think it's something that kind of dawns on you, to be honest. You don't have this light bulb moment in your head going off saying, God, you're brilliant or you're good at it. You know, I mean, when the teams would be picked for the All-Ireland, I knew Angela would be on it, but I wasn't sure if I would be on it. You know, so I was always fearful, you know, am I going to make the team? I mean, I was a sub in 74, and I made the team then after that. But it was always, you know, you were saying all the teams being picked, and I didn't go too well last week, and so did. And, you know, so it wasn't that you were sure of yourself. You know, I always worked at my game and just hoped that I would be picked. And it was the same after an All-Ireland, they would pick the Leinster team, you know, and you'd be wondering, well, did I do enough today to make the Leinster team? So I suppose I appreciated the fact that I was making the team and that I was holding my place, but I certainly was never sure of it, to be honest.
Is that something that's within you, though, or was that a fair reflection of where you were in the pecking order?
Look, I suppose, you know, everyone knows the story about the man that came into the shop to Daddy and asked, I would always be helping Daddy in the shop, and he wanted to know, was this the good one or the bad one? Oh, you know, so I suppose in the back of my mind then that was a light bulb moment, because I said, you know, Angela is better than me. At the time, of course, I didn't think she was. You know, I actually wouldn't even have given it any thought. I just thought the two of us were the same. Sure, in latter years, you know, you would know that, well, Angela is capable of turning the game and winning the game for you. But I suppose that sowed a little bit of doubt in my head. To be honest. And it's not that I was conscious of it, but yes, it was probably there, if you know what I mean, you know.
It was a kind of a hard situation to be in. Like, you were obviously supremely talented, and then she was as well. So was there competition there at any stage?
No, there was never competition, Marie, because I could, you know, I couldn't solo with the ball on the hurl and know where the goalposts were, whereas Angela could. I mean, she could head to goal and know that the ball was on the hurl and she wouldn't lose it. Whereas with me, I probably had to work at that skill. You know, I was a runner. I was able to cover the tracks. I was able to work back and work forward. So I had attributes that probably Angela would admit that she hadn't. But would I be able to turn a game and win it for you? No, certainly she would, you know. But then, as we have always said, it was the players that we had around us, you know, invariably Breda Holmes and Joe Dunn, Deirdre Malone, they would all seek Angela out if they were in trouble, as I would, you know. Yeah. But we were blessed. We were just so blessed with the players, you know, that we were surrounded with in all the All-Irelands that we won, yeah.
So when you were developing then as an athlete, and obviously you started very young, if you're playing in junior county finals when you're 12, what were you working on most? What skills were you developing most?
Well, it was first touch, really, I suppose, because a lot of people, even today, you know, they see the ball coming and the next thing they're scoring a goal or a pint before they have the ball in their hands. So it was one thing that Daddy always said, keep your eye on the ball, keep your eye on the ball, keep your eye on the ball. And we would go up the Chapel Avenue, as we called it, as a big gable house, and we'd have a tennis ball, and we'd just be at the side of the house, just hitting the ball, and one touch into hand, one touch into hand. So always doing that, you know, and regardless of where the ball was, keeping your eye on the ball. So we worked hard at that, to be honest, yeah.
I know it was a different time, and women's sport is in a different place, but what were you thinking of when you were doing that practice and you were honing your skills? Did you have a pathway? Did you think, I'm going to play for Kilkenny and I'm going to win all these All-Irelands? Like how much of an influence did Camogie have on your life? Like how much did it consume you? The way, like you obviously know now, the inter-county setups, how much the players dedicate themselves to Camogie and how they have their goals and their ambitions, and it's such a big part of their lives, all consuming now. Was it like that when you were playing?
Well, it was for us here, to be honest. I mean, it was a family occasion for us to go to a match on the Sunday. You know, and all you wanted to do was win an All-Ireland and get to Crowe Park. Obviously, make the Kilkenny team first. And, you know, you'd be playing your Leinster final, win the Leinster or the All-Ireland semi-final. That was a big thing, because if you won it, you knew you were going to Crowe Park. And once you got to Crowe Park, well, you had a chance of winning it. But, I mean, our life, really, our family were consumed in Camogie, in the GAA. Because, you know, I keep going back to the 70s, you know, there wasn't an awful lot to do at that stage. There wasn't, you know, the television came on at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock for the Angelus. That was it. And other than that, there was no other games that we played at that time. There was only Camogie, and okay, we were with the Harriers as well, where we did a little bit of running. But like the Camogie, then when it did go well, it involved the village, because suddenly you get to an All-Ireland and there was busloads going to support you. So it was like, once you won one, you wanted to go back and get that feeling of winning again. And like, our lives were put on hold, to be quite honest. It did revolve around Camogie. You know, if you had a good summer's evening, you know, Daddy'd say, well, you can't go swimming, you have a match on Sunday, which was totally, you know, we could have gone swimming, but at that time, in his mind, we couldn't. And, you know, sure, it was, as I said, it was a great family occasion. We could all pile into the car and head off to the match and, you know, make a great Sunday of it, yeah.
You must have been big stars around the locality then.
Well, sure, look, you know, when Kilkenny started to win, it was, I suppose, the hurlers weren't doing well at the time. So it was great that, I suppose, the supporters had the Camogie to fall back on, because it was always the Sunday after the hurling All-Ireland. And, you know, the crowds, as I said, that came from the village, and the bus then, when we'd be coming home from Crowe Park on the Monday, would come through the village here in Ballyragget, and we'd get off the bus and we'd go through Castlecomer, where my mother was from, into Ballyragget, and then on to Kilkenny. And like, we wouldn't have, you know, the 10,000 people out to see us coming home, but you could have 5, which was great for Kilkenny and great for Camogie, and you'd have the majorettes bringing you down the town, which the hurlers had. So suddenly, you know, we got successful and we kept winning, and sure, we went on the 7 in a row then, you know, and that was unbelievable. And, you know, just unfortunately, we didn't do 8 in a row.
I know nowadays we often have conversations about equality and comparisons between male sports and female sports, and you know, we look at things like expenses and, you know, gear, and you know, we just talk it out. And there's an awareness that for a long time, it is changing now though, the men were treated better than the women. Were they conversations that you were having back then?
Well, we knew probably that the guys were going down to Langton's every night after training and having a big steak supper, where we were driving down to John Street and going into the chipper and buying our own bag of chips. And you would be hoping that when you get to the All-Ireland that you might get a tracksuit and a bag or something like that. We knew it was there, but we didn't crib about it. We just accepted that's the way it was. And in fairness, at the time, even back as far as 74, Ursula Grace was on the team with us, and Ursula's father was Paddy Grace, the secretary for years of the GA hurling board in Kilkenny. You know, the hurling board in Kilkenny, the hurling board have really been good all the years to Camogie. The last night of training, we'd get to go to Langton's, you know, and the hurling board would pay for it, and they'd pay for the train up, and they'd help you with the cost of the hotel. So it was only really, I suppose, in latter years when I got back involved with the teams in 2011 that the girls were kind of saying, well, you know, we want to be professional and we want to be treated as professionally as everyone else. But it wasn't until 2016 when I got involved again that we were lucky enough to get a doctor with us. I mean, that was a long time, and that was, you know, Dr. Martin O'Brien came on, and he's of no expense to the county board. Nicola Aylward was the physio. We had Dr. Fergus Heffernan, the psychologist, you know, and all those people given free of their time. But Camogie couldn't afford it, and we knew that. We knew that, you know, that it was such a cost, and they'd be looking for sponsorship. So it was a big, I suppose, ask of the county board to come up with all the money at the time. And even going back to 2016, there wasn't grants, but there is now. You know, you get a certain amount of a grant, and things are changing for the better. But certainly, we never really looked. We knew we wouldn't get it, so it didn't bother us. Once we got to All Ireland, and once we got to win, you know, if we won the All Ireland, we were happy.
Yeah, well, I think you definitely know that these things take time, and those examples of how late or how long it took to just get the medical people, the necessary medical people involved, shows just that. So back to you now. When look, you said that there was times when you were wondering, are you going to make the team? But like, yet you're making a team and you're winning 7 All Irelands in a row. Was there any stage where you went, okay, I belong here? You know, this is, you know, you weren't questioning yourself about whether you were going to make the team. You realised, or you understood the talent that you had and that you could make it at the top, because you were doing it at the top.
No, there wasn't, to be honest. You win the All Ireland, and, you know, the week after you'd be thinking about the next year, or you go through your winter training with the squash. And I knew coming back from the squash that I would probably be in better shape than any of the girls for the league, and I usually was. But I never took for granted the fact that, you know, I was going to make the team. I wasn't so sure of myself. I mean, 94, I was captain, and I think it was 99. Could have been the first year Tipperary won the All Ireland. I was only a sub that year, so it was never there, you know, that security of, or being assured of myself, to be honest, because you can never stop working at your game, and I never did, you know, and I never took it for granted. No.
And I guess as well, you had Angela driving you on all the time as well. So there was probably no escaping really from the environment and the high performance and the, you know, just the wanting to achieve and to get success. And especially when you start getting it, then I'd imagine that it just keeps going and going and going. But over long careers, and look, most people, I would have said nearly everybody until I did Padraig Harrington in the last podcast episode of this podcast, have setbacks, and he actually said he's never had one, which is rare enough to hear that from sports people. Did you ever have any big setbacks that you had to overcome?
Well, I was very disillusioned, I suppose. I think it was 86 when Angela got suspended for 6 months. We were playing a club game with St. Paul's inside in Kilkenny against a team from Cork, Killa. And it was a fairly heated affair the same day. And we won by 7 points, I think, in the end. And I remember after the match, Angela was in the shower and she was crying. And I suppose they call it sledging now. That's what had gone on that day. We didn't have a name for it at the time. And we were due to play the All Ireland, the Club All Ireland, 2 weeks later. And Angela was coming down from the graveyard, and Daddy called her into the shop, and he said, the match is off tomorrow. And she said, why? Who's dead? And he said, there isn't anyone dead. He said, you have to go to Crowe Park next Saturday to Central Council. So she went to Crowe Park the following week, and they suspended her for 6 months. and we ended up having to go play the Club All-Ireland on the 2nd of December without Angela. She's standing outside the wire, and we play in Glenamaddy. That was a really low point, you know, and I often think to myself, you know, I've put so much back into the Camogie, and how did I do that? You know, when I'm still raw about it to this day, and I still I'm looking for answers. Who did it, or why was it done? She didn't get a red card. Actually, I have to say the girl from Killa as well got suspended for 6 months as well. They didn't get booked. She wasn't asked her name. She didn't get sent off. And suddenly this club in Galway are hosting the Club All-Ireland the next day. They're preparing for us to go. They're organising a meal, and this match is called off to make an example of Angela. Now, I could take it if they were trying to make an example of me, because I would have been the tougher of the two of us. You know, I wouldn't be afraid to give a belt, whereas Angela would play the game, get into the car and go home, whereas I wouldn't. I'd probably hang around for half an hour bitching about something, you know. But that stung, you know, and it hurt the family, you know, for 6 months. You know, I don't understand the reason behind it.
And what did they say it was? If she wasn't red carded, or
on sport, yeah, we don't. Again, it's, you know, so that's 30 something odd years ago, you know. But someone made the call.
That's a very tough blow, as you said, for the family.
Well, for the family, for the whole family, it was.
And did you ever feel like giving up or anything like that?
Well, we did for a while, I suppose, but you know, in '86, then we won the All-Ireland on the 14th of September '86, and my mother died the week after, and she was only 60. And I suppose the whole Camogie fraternity rallied around us, you know, and I suppose that kind of, you just have to kind of get on with it, and you decide, look, you either let him get to you or you continue on and you do the best that you can. And that's what we did. You know, at the time, it was hard. It was harder on Daddy, I suppose, here and us all than it was on Angela. She couldn't get her head around it. And you talk about, you know, publicity and getting no publicity. I mean, she made the 6 o'clock news. I think that the following week, you know, why she was suspended or and that. So that's the big story that it was. So it's just mind-boggling, you know. So that was a real, as I said, a real test for us at the time, yeah.
Even making the 6 o'clock news for a female sports person back then, that gives really good context of how much of a big deal it was, and what a big story it was. And like, especially when you have a local shop and you're coming in and people are coming in and out and meeting you, I can imagine the amount of attention and focus that your dad had to deal with.
Yeah. It wasn't nice, to be honest. You know, as I said, if she had to be sent off, you'd expect it. But I mean, this was 2 weeks after we had played the game. They had 2 weeks had elapsed. We were playing the All-Ireland the next Sunday, and this had happened on a Saturday night. You mean, it just, you couldn't write it.
I know a lot of time has passed now, so you've obviously spent a huge amount of time thinking about it as well. And what's your theory?
My theory is that someone wanted to make an example of Angela for some reason or another. And I really can't figure it out. And I would like, and I've said it several times, I would like the Camogie to come out all these years later and give an explanation of what happened or why it was done. You know?
Have you asked them?
I haven't, but I would say that they know how I feel. I've said it enough times, but I probably will ask them eventually. I won't go to my grave, I think, without getting an answer, or at least trying to get an answer, yeah.
Because that would give you closure then as well, on something that hurts and still hurts to this day. That's disappointing now for all of you involved, because being from a small village as well, and just understanding the GAA, I can actually imagine what it was like to go through that. And we also have the local shop at home, so I know what it's like when people come in and all they want to talk about is the GAA. So it is quite difficult.
Yeah.
That was obviously a very difficult point and a low point, but look, you had so much success as well. Phenomenal, really. Like, I don't think I know we'll never see anything like it again. What for you was your greatest success?
Well, I suppose there was two really. That going back to Angie's suspension, we had to go to Galway then and play the All Ireland without her. And it was a club team, St. Paul's at the time, and we got a 21-yard free that I got a goal off it. We won by a point. And I suppose the other one would have been playing with Liz Downey, because in 91, St. Paul's disbanded because Camogie was mushrooming all over Kilkenny, and there was no team really coming after us in St. Paul's. So we joined the nearest club, which is our neighbours, Liz Downey here. And the game down here in Ballyragget. And we were 11 points down, I think, with 10 minutes to go. People were leaving the grounds. Now, it's a small pitch and, you know, the bank around and everyone is in top of you. There was a huge crowd at the game. And as I said, they were leaving because we were being hammered against Glen Rovers. And all of it shot, the whole thing turned around. Angela got 3-something and we ended up winning by 6 points. Now, it was, I often said it was unheard of. It was like footballers to go down and beat the Kerry footballers. There were star-studded teams: Sandy Fitzgibbon, Linda Mellerick, Trace O'Callaghan, the two Dunlees, Mary Ring. I could go on and go on. And like, we had Marina Downey and Sandra Glees and Angela, myself, Noelle O'Driscoll. And other than that, I suppose we were an average team, weren't expected to win. But that was a brilliant day. And again, to have all the parish and all of Kilkenny at it, you know, it was someday unreal.
No, it's lovely to have those memories.
Yeah.
And then just in terms of your performances yourself, if you were to look back now at the career that you had, and if you were to think about the player that you want to be, is there a performance that defines you, that you think, right, I did exactly what I wanted to do for that game, a standout performance?
Well, I suppose there was 2 years I was voted Player of the Year, which was brilliant. But really what sticks in my mind is the Club All-Ireland. You know, it was a case of having to win it, you know, against all the odds. And at the time, Angela was the big star on the team. The rest of us were all probably the same standard of camogie players. You know, we'd just put our head in or hurling or whatever. But that day was a day that had to be won more so than anything else. It was great to win a Club All-Ireland, but it was why we had to win it, really. And that is, for me, that was my standout day. Yeah.
The club is the backbone of everything, really, and where it all started. And then, like, having such a long career, you've had, I could say, numerous amount of coaches, and like, you've all your family as well, and of course your sister. Who do you think had the biggest impact on your career?
Oh, sure, my father did, really, you know, because he was having played for Kilkenny, I suppose, and even, you know, when we went off to boarding school, he would drive down to Callan on a Wednesday for us for training. Now, my mother would have been here and not knowing what was happening. She just thought he was going off to training. And he was making the trip down to Callan, picking the two of us up, bringing us down soup and sandwiches and bringing us back to Callan. And she didn't know for years. I think we were well left Callan by the time we eventually admitted. So we were at all those training sessions, you know. So he was, you know, the same with buying the hurls or, you know, giving you a bit of advice or giving out to you because you didn't do something, you know. But basically, I suppose, really our parents, because they brought us every place. You know, if you wanted to go to a camogie game, and even if you weren't involved yourself, they'd drive you down. And as I said, it was a real family affair, into the car on Sunday and head to Wexford. And at that stage, there was nearly a game every weekend, because you could have 2 or 3 games to play in the Leinster. And if you were lucky enough then to get out of that, you could have an All-Ireland quarter-final, an All-Ireland semi-final, and then an All-Ireland. But certainly, you know, my parents, without doubt, yeah.
What do you think will be your legacy?
Oh, Lord. I'd say...
It's a hard one for people.
Yeah, well, sure it is. I mean, I suppose people will have to say what my legacy is, really. It's not really up to me, and everyone will have a different opinion, I suppose, if you ask them about Ann Downey. Look, I would like to think that I got an awful lot out of camogie, but I gave an awful lot back as well. I didn't walk away from it. I had been involved with Kilkenny for a good few years, with the juniors, and I left them, and then I came back and we won an intermediate All-Ireland with the intermediate team, and then of course 2016, and it was really, I suppose, 2016 is the structures that I had put in place at the time. Dr. Martin and Ferguson and Nicola and Noreen Roach, Noreen is the dietitian with Kilkenny senior hurlers. They all came on board, and to get that professionalism started, and Paddy Mullally and Conor Phelan, who's with the seniors now, Conor was involved, Lee Meagan, all those people that gave free of their time to Camogie. So I would hope it's really what I put back rather than what I took from Camogie,
Do you think Camogie in general is in a good place?
I do. I think the standard probably with the first 4 to 5 teams is very high. I would be concerned maybe about the standard then after that. Certainly there's 1 or 2 teams that have gone back to junior and intermediate, but Camogie, it's probably a hard sport to play really. You have to be skillful, whereas you might be football. I think is probably an easier game for young girls to take up because they can pick the ball and maybe kick the ball unless you really have 2 left feet, But Camogie is skillful, but certainly I think we're going in the right direction. And with all the exposure that we're getting now with television coverage and semi-finals and quarter-finals on the television, it's just brilliant. And I'm hoping that we'll grow and grow. I think when the association joins, all in one, if we're all under the umbrella of the GAA and you have a Camogie match before a hurling match, I think then we'll really be, can say, look, we've made it, we're home. I'd certainly like to have as many Camogie games on the television as the ladies football have. Every weekend you turn on, there's probably 2 or 3 games on, and that's brilliant. And that's what we need. Plenty of exposure, and because young girls need role models, and we have plenty of those in Kilkenny anyway. Galway have them, Cork have them, Tipperary have them, and that's what young girls need. Someone to aspire to.
Yeah, that's for sure. And do you think that in your lifetime, in my lifetime, we will see all the associations under the one umbrella?
I think we will. I think, and I hope within the next year or 2, to be quite honest, yeah. I think they're heading in the right direction. I think the goodwill is there. Maybe just needs a final push to get it over the line, but certainly, yeah, I think it's the way to go.
And what's next for you then?
Oh, Lord. Look, I never say never, to be honest. Certainly for the moment, it's looking after the garden and, heading into work, which I enjoy. But whether I'll ever get back involved with the team, I really don't know, to be honest. At this point in time, it's me time.
Yeah, I just find it hard seeing your passion and hearing you talking about the sport, that door would be closed.
Well, I could get involved, but probably not as involved as I had been, either a manager or, I certainly never mind doing a session for anyone, and I've done plenty of sessions, one-offs and that. But who knows? You just don't know what's around the corner. And as I said, I never say never, but for the moment anyway, it's time out. You
are one of the few people who have gone down the road of managing a men's team, and it is rare enough to see that. How do you find it?
I didn't have a problem with it really. The first time was our minor team here, and we had great success with minor B won it, and then in 2000, I think it was 11, we won the under 21, and the lads have really been respectful when I was involved with them, regardless of what I asked them to do. I suppose last year, as I said, was a difficult year because we only had 15 weeks with them, and I did find with club that I was still dealing with the same lads, but they were that much older, 10 years older, and they had different commitments. They were farming or they had families, whereas with the Camogie, they were there because they wanted to be there. They wanted to be on the Kilkenny team. But with the club, it wasn't always possible to get everyone at training. And I found that hard, but was certainly with the respect that the lads had shown me, I couldn't talk highly enough about them.
Oh, that's brilliant to hear. And thanks so much for sharing your journey with me and with us. It's been absolutely fascinating. And you were a hero for so many when they were few and far between and we couldn't see them. So thank you so much for doing that as well. And thanks everybody for listening and watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share and leave a review.